Back to work yesterday. We got a chance to get a bonus practice in, if you will. Normally we practice on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Thursdays, walkthroughs on Friday. But, with the off week, we got a couple of days in last week, and then guys came back Saturday night, Sunday. We weight trained them, conditioned them, and then Monday got about a 90-minute practice in with some skill work, skill development, and some temple preparation. Today will be a typical Tuesday for us. But we're preparing against a very well-coached football team. Very impressed with what Matt has done. He's done a remarkable job. If you just look back on, our game in 2013 and where he's taken this program, they're deserving of their ranking. They've earned everything that they've gotten this year as a football team. It's an outstanding defense. They do everything very well. Phil Snow's a veteran defensive coordinator. He's seen a little bit of everything in his career, from the NFL to college, and implements a lot of different looks defensively. And I think they just, they're solid in everything that they do, fundamentally sound. They can bring pressures. They play a very good zone, 2 deep, 3 deep, man, combination coverages. Just really well-coached football team. Offensively, they just they bring a lot of different personnel groupings at you. Thomas, the running back, certainly, Walker are the two that, obviously are the energy to that offense, but have big play capabilities with Anderson and Bryant at the wide receiver position. So balance, I think, is what they're striving for offensively. They want to run the football, play action pass, but utilizing a lot of different schemes and personnel groupings. Solid in special teams. They've been able to make some big plays in special teams. So, physical type offense. They play great second half football. They've won a lot of games late. Just have a really solid football team. Again, one deserving of where they are, a top 25 football team. It'll be a great challenge for our football team going on the road, and one that we'll have to play very well. So with that, I'll open up to questions.
Brian, I'm curious with Avery Sebastian, you thought maybe this would be about the time you got him back. What's his progress?
He's walking around and probably, would be 2-3 weeks before we could even get him to the level that is necessary to play. It's just one of those things where, bone growth has been, slow for him. He's been on a stimulator for bone growth. It just has not come back to the level that most do. So, if we can't see, progress in the next couple of weeks, then we'll have to decide. He's eligible for a 6th year because of back-to-back years of injuries. So we'll have to see, what he's capable of doing for us over the next couple of weeks. But it's just been a difficult injury in the sense that it usually heals up quickly, but he just hasn't had the bone growth necessary for us to fully activate him.
We kind of asked you in the heat of battle about your safety situation, specifically with Redfield and Farley, and you said, well, they'll both play. Now with kind of a week to kind of mull that over, do you want them both to play? Do you want there to be separation? What's your hope from that position?
Honestly, what I want and what we have are two different things. And, both those kids are committed to being the best players that they can be. And, we're coaching them every single day. You following my drift?
Yeah.
We're working hard with them every day. And so we just feel like I think both of those guys are going to give us what we need at the position, and it's going to be one where both of them are going to have to help us win.
You got a couple of Philly kids going
Yeah.
home this weekend. McGlinchey, I want to ask you about specifically.
Yep.
His development. Is he becoming the player that you thought he would with that, height and length promise that he came in with?
I think so. I think anytime that you put somebody out at the tackle position, you're and somebody that didn't have a pedigree particularly at the position, nor came from a football program that turns out a lot of Division I prospects. You really have to trust in your evaluation and trust that you're going to get somebody that is committed to that developmental process. And we knew Mike and how hard of a worker he was, and we knew what we were getting with a workman-like attitude that he has every day. And then Harry Heastan has done a great job of developing him. So you bring those two together, and we knew that we were going to have something that was going to give us the kind of play that he has. He's still scratching the surface. Every day is I think for him, he sees things that he hasn't seen before. But the length, the athleticism makes up for a lot of things that he hadn't seen before.
And do you think he's a guy that could be a pretty good pro someday if he kept on the same arc?
I don't think that there's much doubt that he's going to be playing at another level. His athleticism, his length, his toughness, all those things, his IQ, how he carries himself, he's going to be a great pro. He just needs more work at the game. He came in with very little knowledge of an offensive line, just even vocabulary. Words of an offensive lineman, didn't resonate with him. So it's really developmental for him, and he's made great progress. But I definitely see him playing this game for a long time.
And Niles Morgan was a guy that had to play a lot of football for you because of circumstance last year.
Sure.
This year, those circumstances don't exist at this point. We've seen a little bit of him. I'm wondering what his development has been like kind of behind the scenes. Is he pushing Joe at all? And how is he handling not being a big,
Contributor.
Prominent contributor?
Well, Joe has been a cleanup hitter for us, if you will, and we don't want to take him out of the lineup. We feel very confident if Niles was asked to go in the football game, and I know in talking to Brian about this in particular, that he's just handled himself extremely well. He's been very impactful on special teams for us. He's ready to go in and play for us. I think we're just feeling very comfortable keeping Joe in the lineup. Having not had him for so many games last year, we want to get every snap out of him as possible. So I think it's really less about Niles and more about keeping Joe on the field.
Brian, to your left, you discussed Temple's last trip in here. They were kind of rebuilding again under Coach Rule. What did you see that day? They fell behind right away, but really fought as much as they possibly could against you in that matchup.
Yeah, I think that's what we saw as a physical team. They're much more athletic as a football team now than they were then, especially on the defensive line and certainly in the skill position area. You can see their recruiting has really changed the look of their football team. But there certainly was a toughness about them then that there is now. They're a four-quarter team, as evidenced by their numbers are astonishing in terms of the second half. Points scored versus points led. I think 29 points resonates to me as the number that they've given up in the second half. I could be wrong, but I think, is that correct? Something like that. Thank you. So just a great second half football team. So that tells you a lot about their mindset and the kind of football team they have.
Did you see any of this coming? They were 500 last year and were kind of on that bowl fringe. They didn't expect to be 7-0 probably. Nobody outside that locker room at least. Did you see a potential sleeper team though in them when you were kind of looking?
Well,
things
a couple
over?
of scores jumped out at me last year. 13-7 against a very good Cincinnati offense. Some very close games, the Memphis game. So we saw some things there that I think defensively in particular And we knew that this program was going to be one where they were going to be a physical football team, and that they were going to be relying on a very good defense and an opportunistic, tough offense. And you could see that in some of the scores, especially late in the season.
And you mentioned having to become road warriors. You started so well here on the road. I think it was 9-3 in your first road games. Kind of uneven since. Is there a change at all in your approach, or is it just execution? Is there a change in approach going forward?
No. I think that, some of our road games the last couple of years, the ACC took it easy on us and had us open up at Clemson and at Florida State. Those are pretty tough places to play at. I just think we've played some tough teams. Our kids have been prepared, have played hard. Look, you want to go on the road and you got to take care of the football. That's the most important thing. And you got to have a mindset when you're on the road that, you've got to play from behind at times, and you've got to overcome the crowd and all those things, and officiating. And our guys are tough-minded about that. So we just talk about, really taking care of your own business. And if you do that, play hard for 4 quarters, get it to the fourth quarter, and you got a chance to win.
Does a month on the road kind of help your approach at all? It's not a routine because the game times are different, but you're barely home.
Well, I think, when you look at, the kind of football teams that play late, and I say late, December and January, they have to have these stretches. They have to play well on the road. You can't just sit at home and play at home. So I think the really good football teams have to prove themselves. So, I think for us it'll be, October is for pretenders and November will be for contenders. And we'll show ourselves, in that regard because of our schedule in November.
Coach, from an insider's perspective, rather than what you see on the field, from what you deal with day to day, recruiting, that sort of thing, what's the difference between Power 5 and the Group of 5 in the way the programs operate and what you battle recruiting-wise against that level?
Well, probably recruitment of personnel, retention of personnel, so that's, a lot of times salaries, dollars and cents, facilities, infrastructure. Those 2 things probably are the biggest when we talk about the differences between the two, which equals revenue, right? At the end of the day, TV contracts, television revenue, dollars. So I think if you boil it down, it's really investing back into your program in personnel, in recruiting, in infrastructure, and that's probably the biggest difference between the two. And it certainly doesn't mean that you can't put together a really good football team if you're not in the Power 5. The question is, can you do that year in and year out? And that's, that's what you have to be able to do when you don't sometimes have the same resources that you do in the Power 5.
Brian, you've been pretty strong historically after bye weeks, and I think different teams probably need different things out of the bye week. Aside from just sort of resting up, what did you feel like this team needed out of the bye? What do you think they got out of it?
I think they needed just to get off campus, and they had been here a long time. I just think just a change in routine is simply all that they needed. It was an academic break more than a football break for us. They like to play football. I think they could have been, if we told them we were going to play football for 45 minutes and it was going to be 7-on-7 and maybe a little bit of pass rush, they would probably went out there every day. But they needed a break from all the other things that they're required to do. And they got that, and I think that was probably the energy that they needed to get restored.
As much as maybe having midterms and USC coincide was a negative. Is just the byproduct of fall break falling on the bye a bigger positive?
If we could get that, Pete, every year, that would be a huge piece for us. So if we could craft that in scheduling, that would be very helpful to Notre Dame.
You've said a lot that when you go on the road or somebody comes here, you're always going to get their best shot. But it's rare that you may be playing in the biggest game in that program's history, or at least, the biggest profile game. What do you expect on Saturday night from that environment in a place that hasn't had a whole lot of environments like this?
Well, I think it'll be an outstanding environment to play in. It won't take much to get our guys excited about it. It'll be a full stadium. It's a lot easier for our guys to feel the excitement at Clemson than it is if it's a half-full stadium and, it's not a raucous crowd. So we feed off that. Our guys enjoy that. They're used to it. Every week they play in front of 80-something thousand. So, we hope it is an exciting atmosphere because we know football players, as student athletes, as college athletes, they love that environment. So we'll prepare for a loud crowd in terms of our preparation. We'll put the music on this week, and just like we did when we went down to Clemson, and then have to play better than we did down at Clemson.
With Fuller and the Philadelphia connections there, I know you had high hopes when you recruited him, but was there a moment his freshman year or maybe even camp where you thought, okay, he could be as good as he's turned out to be, opposed to, this guy obviously has great speed and good ball skills, but that he could take it as far as he has?
I think when we played Will as a true freshman, we felt at that time that he had an element that could help us win. So I think anytime you play a true freshman, you have high hopes that in a couple of years he's going to be, a potentially game-breaking player for you. Or you wouldn't play him as a true freshman, unless you're just playing him, because of needs. And we had a really good player out there in T.J. Jones. So it was really about what we saw as a true freshman with the ability to get down the field that we thought that he could be a really good player in time.
Brian, one of the perplexing stats for the team, for me at least, is top 10 in 3 and outs, but they also seem to have almost every game a span where the teams score in bunches. How do you explain that, and what do you do to fix that?
Well, we had, I think it was 6 plays against USC for 250 yards. We're at a point at one time in the game where it's 24-10 with 5 minutes and 52 seconds to go in the half. And the thing just goes crazy on us, right? Gadget play, screen pass, and, there you go. Come out of the half, and we miss a tackle in the backfield. And then nothing again. And so we clearly, as coaches and players, know what our deficiencies are, and we know how to fix them. We got to get that done, and in practice, and we were talking about it last night again as a staff. I mean, we're making up gadget plays. We're trying to get our guys to do their job and be disciplined, and we're even enacting some techniques to make sure that guys run through their man and before they cut a guy loose. So, we clearly know some of the things that we have to get better at. And if we're more consistent as a defense, we're going to be really good. We just got to get to that point. And we clearly, those numbers are what they are, and we've got to correct those.
And it seemed you mentioned on the Sunday before the bye week that missed tackles was one of the problems, but it seemed like in some of the long runs, some of the runners have gone untouched. Is it a thing of just one player doing the wrong thing creates a space where players can get open, or is it a couple players working in tandem when one guy makes a mistake and the other guy follows them? Well,
the play that we were concerned about was a long run. We had an unblocked player in the backfield who missed the tackle. And then we took a poor angle by our safety. And so, your safeties have got to be that, and they have got to be your safeties. And they've got to be there if there is a missed tackle in your front seven. And so, we missed a tackle that was an unblocked hat that we should have made a tackle. And then it gets to the safety level and we miss another tackle. So one of it is, certainly continue to work with our guys on a day-to-day basis. But we are who we are. And we just got to go back out on the practice field. We got to work on tackling like we did yesterday. We got to continue to work with the guys. There is no waiver wire. We're not cutting anybody. We're not trading anybody. We just got to work with the guys we have and get better. And they're committed to doing that because they see the film and we see the film. We got to put them in good position to succeed. We got to continue to do that. And then we got to be positive with them and get the best out of them every day.
Just a quick question on Will Fuller. I know Chris Brown is kind of the leader in that group, but does Will provide some of that leadership too? Does he help work with some of the younger receivers?
Oh yeah, they're very good with the young guys. Like he's been great with Equanimous in terms of routes. Like if you were at practice, and you guys have been, but not for a while, like Will stand like with EQ before he goes in, and he's talking to him all the time about the routes and what he should be doing, and they're really good. I think Chris is the best at it, but Will is very, very responsible when it comes to those young guys because he feels like he was mentored by T.J. Jones, and he wants to pass that on, and so it's a good situation from that standpoint.
Coach, over on your left. I know you mentioned Mike McGlinchey, and then besides the obvious candidates of Jalen Smith, Ronnie Stanley, and even Will Fuller, who are some guys in the program right now that you could see developing into some future NFL draft picks?
Oh, I haven't really spent much time thinking about that. I'm focused really. I respect your question, but I just haven't given it much thought about the NFL, and I've been worried about this darn Temple team. They're driving me crazy. It's a really good football team. I think we got a lot of guys. Look, every guy that comes to Notre Dame, if they don't want to play in the NFL, I'm not recruiting them. They all want to play in the NFL. They want to get their degree first. That's number one. Number two, they better want to help Notre Dame win a national championship. And then number three, I want you to go to the NFL if that's what you want to do. So I think we got a boatload of guys that have that ability. I just haven't gotten a chance to sit down and think about who those guys are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Brian, up here. I think on Showtime last week we saw C.J. Prosise wearing a red jersey in practice. What went into that, and have you ever had a running back have a red jersey in practice?
Was that on Showtime?
I think it was.
That darn Showtime. I'll tell you what, they're a pain in my butt. All right, they're off. No more Showtime. We're going to HBO. You know what? That's the first time I've done that in 25 years, and I'm sorry that got out. I guess you couldn't help it if you showed any of it. I just felt like he had been getting a lot of carries, and we were at that point where I didn't want him. We're thudding the back in practice. We're trying to really do our defense as much justice as possible and helping them in tackling and not being in a tag-off situation. We got to get better at tackling, so we're thudding the back. And I didn't want him to get in there and get thudded and get hurt during practice. So I broke all my rules, and I put a red jersey on a back for the first time in 25 years. It's out there.
With the bye week with him, is he one of the guys who could really benefit not only from the routine break?
He didn't have a red jersey on yesterday. I can tell you that.
In terms of him, when you look at his success and you look at the offensive line, do you have a stat or a way that you kind of gauge if it's CJ having the success, if it's the offensive line, if it's like CJ gets, the offensive line creates 5 yards and then CJ gets in the open field? How do you kind of differentiate that?
Generally speaking, we keep just a couple of stats, and that is, yards after contact. So a lot of that would fall on CJ's shoulders. And the rest of it, we just put it on the offensive line, and working as a group and the receivers blocking downfield. So the only really stat that we carry is yards after contact, which, is attributed to the running back specifically. Other than that, it's about having a great offensive line and getting guys committed downfield blocking for you.
With another Philly guys making homecoming, where is Josh on his freshman year learning curve?
Josh
Adams.
I would say that for most freshmen, he is in the probably 80 percentile, 90 percentile. He's way up there. He's done a terrific job of picking up the offense, and he's a really smart football player. I'm really impressed with what he's been able to do in his freshman year.
Coach, right in front, with the off week, was there a temptation maybe with a young quarterback? He really hasn't had a whole lot of time. It was game after game after game. Or was it important for him to clear his head like everybody else?
He was running on fumes, and not just the academic. There was a lot thrown on him, being the quarterback at Notre Dame, and this was all new to him. Having a camera, being the center of it. He needed a break, and you can see there's a lot more pep in his step and energy and confidence, and it was a welcome break for him.
And the momentum that you got after the USC win, that could have gone either way, but coming at a time when you had a break, how important was that for the team, for recruiting, just the overall picture to get that one win?
Oh, it's very important to beat your rival, to beat them, certainly go into a bye week, had a big recruiting weekend. I don't know that it ever hinges on winning and losing in recruiting, but it sure doesn't hurt it. So I think more than anything else, our guys wanted to eradicate last year's game against USC more than anything else. That's really the only thing that was in their mind, and they needed some time off. So there's certainly momentum that's built into the recruiting process because we were on the road recruiting, and you can hear there's a buzz about it.
And finally for me, can you remember a time when there's been big game after big game for you guys? I know a lot of the games are huge, but Virginia was talking about that being their biggest game at home in history. Clemson, biggest game in years. Now Temple's talking about this being the game.
Well, I think you can look at it two ways. One, I think that Notre Dame's football program is regarded as a quality football team, and that's a good thing. I think the other thing is there's a lot of anticipation in college football today when, teams that have not been in it before are now vying for, an opportunity. So it creates a lot of energy. It creates a lot of anticipation. So you're seeing both of those things come together.
Has to make you smile. Just a couple years ago, the word relevant was a big buzzword, obviously. Very relevant.
I think we've eliminated that word from the vocabulary as it relates to Notre Dame football.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You're right. Going back to the CJ theme there with the red jersey and all, you have a combination coming up where you are playing 4 road games in the next 5 weeks, but also you're going up against teams that are known for their physicality: Temple, Boston College, Stanford, Pittsburgh. How do you, is there a point where you maybe want to taper off heading into November, maybe some of the physical work, or because of the depth you've been able to build, do you maintain it?
You have to be very careful in practice that you don't turn practice into just, a tempoed walkthrough. I've been down this before and playing 14 games in playoffs in Division II where you're playing really good football teams, that you don't turn it into a walkthrough. You have to pick your spots. You still have to play fast and physical. You just can't do it the entire length of the practice that you're used to doing maybe earlier in the year. So you really have to find out what's important. What do you really need to work on? What are the things that you have to have that pace for? Is it your short yardage period on Wednesday? Then you better bang in that period and not bang, when you're running your openers, say, for example, or third and long. So I think you really have to start when you get into November, pick your spots in practice where you really have to focus on those things. Because I don't believe you can use the whole practice and go 2 hours and bang your football team, or you're going to lose a lot of the guys necessary to get you over the hump.
Is there more of a fatigue factor that can take over when you have to travel as much as you will the next month there?
I don't think so. I mean, we're not going very far. I think if we were going to the West Coast and back, we're an hour, an hour 15-minute flight. So, I don't think it's too much of a factor for us. So I'm not really that concerned. We'll play this game. We'll get back late, but that's after a break. So, and then we'll play Pittsburgh, and then we're at home. So. I think it works out pretty good for us, and then you're the light at the end of the tunnel. Then adrenaline and all those things kind of take over. So I think the real stretch here for us is these back-to-back weeks are really important, starting with this Temple team that's a really good football team and getting through this week.
You're ranked 15th in rushing right now nationally, and in the past, a big part when you were running the ball well was you had a lot of double tight end situations, and they were very effective with their blocking and all. And you have much more inexperience there. How have you assessed the tight ends overall in aiding the running attack? And where do you feel that their growth can just continue?
They're a bit inconsistent, and most of it is, we put them in some very pronounced positions on the edge of our offense, and so they have to make big time plays for us. They're not inside cutoff players for us. So we're trying to get to the perimeter. They've got to capture the perimeter for us. So it's a little bit different in our offense. They are high profile position players for us. And they're getting better each and every week, but there's some inexperience in that group, as you know. You look at Nick Wisher and even Tyler Luatua on Alizé and Chase. Those are not experienced players across the board, but we're doing pretty good with them. So I think each and every week it's a lot of developmental work, and Scott Booker's doing a good job. Harry Heastant's done a lot of work with them as well. Off the field, Jeff Quinn is working with them. In helping them as well. So we've got a lot of hands on it. A lot of people are spending time there, and they're getting better each and every week, but there's some inexperience with that group too.
Where do you feel you've been able to best compensate to have an effective rushing attack without maybe having that same type of production at tight end?
Oh, a breakaway back, C.J. Procise. I mean, he's been the difference in that. He's turned, 8 to 10 yard runs into 50 or 60 yard runs. That's been the difference.
Thank you.
Brian, we'll keep it here. Just going into this week, what's your message or theme with the team this week?
Well, we're kind of just got back here, and when we got back here on Sunday, we just talked about where we are and what we need to do. So I kind of really set the table for them. Talked about Temple, what kind of challenge they're going to be. We're still evolving into what the theme is this week. Yesterday was, as you can imagine, we were getting the rust off a little bit. So there was a little bit of a different message yesterday. We didn't clean up the room. We didn't put away all of our clothes. So we had a little bit of a different message. Today, we'll talk about what it takes to win on the road, what kind of mentality you need to do, what you have to do, and what we didn't do to win on the road in particular. So those messages will get out today. Yesterday was a transition day, if you will. We were transitioning from guys that were coming in from different parts of the country and that kind of stuff. So we shook them up yesterday. Today we'll talk about what it takes to win on the road.
Brian, over here to your right. We talk a lot about Jerry, Alize, freshmen who are playing. I was wondering if there are any freshmen who haven't played yet who are really catching your eye in practice, maybe guys who weren't as visible in that sense in August.
I think, there's probably Miles Boykin is a guy that, is going to be a really good player for us that, doesn't have to play for us, but if we had to put him in a position, certainly could do some really good things for us. I think that, Ashton White's going to be a really good player for us. He's, McKelty is working with our varsity guys, but probably don't have to play him this year. He's going to be a really good player for us. I think that, we know about, some of the defensive linemen. I'd say, all of those defensive linemen are all going to be really good players for us. They're just, developmental guys right now. It's just going to take a little time. I'd say those are the guys that jump out at me right now.
All right. I know
Good.
we have some people on the phone.
Of course, we've got to try
I
that.
guarantee it. All right, let's go to the phone.
And at this time, to ask a question on the phone, please press star, then the number 1. We'll go first to Todd Burlage with UND.com.
Trip you up, Michael. Brian, I'm doing wanted to ask you about a couple guys. Let me start with Chris Brown. Obviously, he's been overshadowed a little bit through his career. Some great players in front of him there. But at the same time, I think what's jumped out at me is very steady progress and improvement. What has kind of gone into that?
He is an incredibly hard worker. Every single day, we wear GPS monitors, our wide receivers that track their output every single day, and his output is unmatched in terms of how hard he works every single day. We have to actually talk to him about his forced production. It's sometimes we're like you need a day off because of his work ethic and the way he comes to practice and how hard he works every single day is unmatched.
Do you see him playing at the next level, Brian?
Oh, I think he's definitely a guy that will get an opportunity. He'll block. He'll be a great special teams guy. He's got speed. He'll go up and catch the football. So I definitely think he'll have an opportunity.
The other one I wanted to ask again about CJ. Obviously, the position switches and whatnot. A lot has been made about that. But what goes into it? He made it all look so seamless, especially the move from wide receiver to running back. Is that just athleticism? Is that attitude, smarts? What went into that?
Well, great knowledge of the offense helped him, make the transition quickly. So, everything relative to the offense, he didn't have to think about it. All he's had to think about really are the mechanics and the steps, in terms of the running game. Everything else has just been naturally running with the football. He's just a natural runner with the ball in his hands. And he did enough of it, in his first couple of years where, we would have jet sweeps and things that, he was just a natural runner of the ball. And he's kind of continued that. The only thing that he's had to think about is really the mechanical pieces of running the football. Other than that, it's been a natural transition.
So thanks, Brian.
Yep.
We'll go next to Joseph Santaloquito with Philadelphia Daily News.
Hey, Brian. How you doing?
Good, thanks.
Brian, I apologize if this question's been asked already, but you call this a road game. Yet I'm here in Philly, and everybody's excited about Notre Dame coming here. And there's going to be 50,000 Notre Dame fans that are going to fill that stadium. if you could talk about that for a little bit. I mean, there's a great response to Notre Dame. It's Notre Dame.
Well, I think that, from our standpoint, we've traveled all over the country and, we're met with great support, whether we're in, especially on the East Coast. New York has been a great area. Certainly the metropolitan cities, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia have all been, very strong areas for us in both recruiting and following Notre Dame. So I don't think it's a huge surprise. I think there'll be a lot of Temple fans there as well. We're preparing for that. But, we know that the East Coast has always been a strong area for Notre Dame in terms of support. So that doesn't surprise me that much.
Brian, how fertile has this area been, obviously, with Mike from Philly, with Will from Philly, with Josh from Philly? How fertile has Philadelphia turned out to be for Notre Dame?
Well, those are three of our better players. So, and they very easily could be three of the best players that we have on offense if you really squint. So, those three guys from that area just tells you about the kind of players. They're national recruits, and they come, right from that Philadelphia area. So I think that speaks volumes about the football in that area.
And finally, Brian, last question. Knowing how hyped these guys are going to be coming into this, will you pull them aside? Will you talk to them about, hey, we're going to try to treat this as any other game? Because for these three guys, this is not going to be any other game. For these three guys, they're coming home. They're going to have anywhere between 400 to 500 people there for them.
Yeah, well, we've already had a little conversation about it. We're actually going to practice at Mike McGlinchey's high school, so they'll have to settle into the game, and they will. They've played in some big venues. They understand that there's going to be some excitement about it, and I'm sure they'll be excited, but they're going to have to settle into the game. We'll have a conversation. I know I've already talked to Mike about it, but Will and Josh, they'll have to settle into the game because they're going to need to play well for us to win.
Gotcha. And you'll arrive in Philly when? You guys will practice at Penn Charter by Thursday?
No, we'll come in Friday and practice over at Penn on Saturday morning.
Gotcha. Okay, Brian, thank you for your time.
You're welcome.
We'll go next to Mark Narducci with Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hey, Brian, in getting ready for this game, what have you seen from P.J. Walker, Temple's quarterback?
I think, from my perspective, somebody that manages their offense extremely well, can run the football, has the ability to push the ball down the field, athleticism, and he doesn't turn the ball over, takes care of the football. I mean, I think, what Matt Rule does, and of course, Marcus Satterfield as their offensive coordinator, they obviously preach to him about taking care of the football. He's very careful in taking care of the football, can keep plays alive. He's just a really solid quarterback, and he's got weapons around him, and he's not out there to win the game on his own. He doesn't go out there with that I got to take over this game mentality. He goes out there knowing that he's got some guys and he's got a really good defense, so he's not going to put them in a bad situation.
How about your thoughts on their defense? They're allowing 14.6 a game, and they've obviously played well this year.
They do it very well, and some of these defenses that are in the top of the country do it with, exotic looks and a lot of pressure. BC leads the country, and they're really, really good, but they play a lot of man coverage. This is not a team that plays a ton of man, doesn't blitz a lot, but plays so fundamentally sound. Will give you multiple coverage looks, can play 3 down and 4 down. Just a really solid, well-coached defense, and they've got good players. They've got veteran players that have played a lot of football, and you can see that.
Thank you.
Yep.
And at this time, there are no other phone questions.